There are 4 common treatments for sex and porn addiction. The first one is the one that is the most popular, and that is therapy and counseling, where you're seeing a licensed therapist in your state who ideally has been certified as a certified sex addiction therapist or in the deceptive sexuality treatment. Either of these therapists are going to see a large caseload of men who have cheated, committed affairs, or are watching pornography and have betrayed their wives. And the advantage to therapy is that it is one-on-one, and because this particular addiction is a process addiction, the uniqueness to every single man is different. And so having a therapist that you are seeing on one-on-one to go through all of your brain processes that have driven this addiction is highly, highly important. I suggest that all men who have cheated or in affairs or are suffering from sex and porn addiction have a one-on-one therapist, because if you do not change these brain processes, you really are statistically likely to do it again. So what are the pros and cons of therapy? Well, the pro is that it's one-on-one, it's custom, and typically you can move these appointments around your schedule. You can also see these therapists virtually if you're unable to get to them physically. What are the cons? Well, you're going to be bound to therapists who are licensed in your state. So if there's a therapist that you really, really connect with and they're not licensed where you live, legally they are going to be unable to see you. And the other cons would be that there's an expense with this, but I don't think it's very expensive. To me, the return on investment you're going to get from therapy heavily outweighs the expense. You're going to be looking at somewhere between $150 a session up to $400 a session. And the other con, too, is that a lot of the really, really good therapists are difficult to get into because everybody wants to see them. The second most popular form of treatment would be inpatient treatment. Inpatient treatment is when you're going to a residential facility. You're not bringing your phone, you're not bringing your laptop, you're unplugged from the world completely for anywhere from 2 weeks up to 8 weeks. And just like all treatment facilities, you're living there on site receiving therapy for 6 to 8 to 10 hours a day for the 2 to 8 weeks that you're there. Now, what are the pros to this? If you're having a really, really hard time getting sober, you cannot prevent yourself from engaging in some of these sexual behaviors, and you're going to completely destroy your life and ruin your marriage, you probably need to go to one of these facilities. You probably need to. Otherwise, you might completely blow up your entire life. You're getting highly focused therapy with people who come in every couple weeks to the facility suffering from sex and porn addiction or having affairs. So you're in a room with men and therapists who are very, very familiar with this issue. The other pro is that you're coming at this thing with everything. There's a good chance you're going to learn a lot about this addiction when you come out. In terms of increasing short-term sobriety, this is a great solution. What are the cons? As an entrepreneur, as a high achiever, which are all the clients that I work with, leaving your phone and computer at home it can be a pretty significant challenge. You're actually going to not be able to attend to any of your work or family matters. And for a lot of the men that I know, disappearing for 2 to 8 weeks completely off the grid, it's just not something that's feasibly possible in the short term. And that's really when inpatient treatment is needed, is kind of right here in the beginning, in this as an immediate solution to a significant problem. And the other con here is the expense. You're looking at anywhere between $25,000 up to $60,000 or $70,000 for treatment. I know that price tag sounds high, but divorces cost a lot more than that. And the heartache, trust me, as somebody who's been personally affected by this addiction myself, the heartache and hardship that you're going to face, there's really no amount of money that can offset that. It's totally worth it. Believe me when I say that. The third most common treatment, and this one's probably the most common, is going to the 12-step meeting. So this would be SA, Sexaholics Anonymous, or SAA, Sex Addicts Anonymous. These 12-step meetings are all over the country, right? So you're going to be able to find them hopefully in person. Now, what are the pros? Well, the biggest pro is that you will be given the opportunity to potentially connect with other men with this addiction, which statistically, scientifically has been proven, connection has been proven to be the most effective form of treatment for people suffering from addiction. Proven. It is the connection with other addicts has been proven to be the most effective treatment. Anybody who's listening to this who's been an addict, it's hyper effective. So that's the pro. Here's the cons. The cons with 12-step is it's a free organization. It's member run. So every single meeting is going to look very, very different. It's run by the members. There's no facilitator. And so there's a lot of just variation there. I mean, is dependent on the men who are there. A lot of high achievers, the men in our group, you may not, depending on where you live, you may not find a lot of other successful men you look up to and admire who are there. And quite often when you're in those rooms, there's not a ton of sobriety. There's a couple guys, but a lot of people are really struggling with sobriety. And so there's also no facilitation around the connection that you're going to get. So there's no crosstalk permitted because they don't want anybody giving advice there. And so all of these various rules, they really limit the amount of connection that you can have. So ultimately, you would have to meet the men there, and then you have to connect with them outside of the meetings, which is very, very common. You'll exchange phone numbers. So again, these are highly effective if you can find a really, really good group. But I will warn you, finding a good SA or SAA meeting and finding men there that you really want to connect with, you feel a strong bond to, and you can recover together, it's quite difficult. It really is. And then the fourth common treatment strategy is our intensives. So an intensive is similar but different to an inpatient treatment. So an intensive would be you're typically staying in a hotel or maybe at a resort. You have your phone, you have your laptop, and you're there for anywhere from 3 days to 5 days. And usually it's more of like imagine like a business training where you're showing up. There's a series of exercises and practices and different things that you're doing to, yes, connect with the other men, but ultimately dive into your individual recovery. That's why they call it an intensive, because they're intense. They're long days. They're heavy. There's tons of emotion there. And you usually fly in. You're there for a few days, staying at the hotel or wherever you're at. And then you're flying home. It looks and feels a lot more like going to a business conference or a business training. And these are a very, very popular option for two reasons, I think. Because one, they're highly, highly effective. They're extremely intense. So you're basically cramming a bunch of the recovery process into a short amount of time if possible, which is the betrayed partners, the wives who have been affected by this. They really like to see that. And they want to see massive action. They want to see you leaning in. They want to see you connecting with other men. They want to see big changes. They want you to be going through a ton of emotion around this through the recovery. They want to see you change. And so intensives are a great way to do that. And they're very cost effective, spending somewhere between $4,000 and $8,000 depending on the intensive that you're signing up to and if hotel and food are included. What are the cons with this? Primarily just travel, right? You are spending these 3 to 5 days away from home. That's probably the only con there with these intensives. But they really are. They're highly, highly, highly effective way of getting a lot of work done in a really condensed amount of time. So there are some other options out there. There's books you can read, podcasts you can listen to. There are online courses. But these four that I listed today are the most common, and they're probably the most effective when used properly. For those of you who are looking for a group that kind of combines a lot of these elements, the Successful Addict, which is the group that we run, combines weekly Zoom calls, we have daily accountability, and we have biannual two times a year in-person 4-day retreats. And all of that, including your hotel, meals, everything, is included in the membership. And so this is a group exclusively for high achievers, entrepreneurs, executives, business professionals, sales professionals. And typically, the men who come into our group are high achievers and high performers. So if you're looking for a group of like-minded men to recover with, go ahead and go to our website, successfuladdict.com. If any of you have questions about any other of these treatment strategies or alternative intensives, feel free to send me a message. I'm happy to point you in the direction of something that could be a good fit for you.